Good evening and welcome back to Pioneer Governors. Tonight we are hosting Ukur Yatani. He is the first governor of Marsabit County. He was, and now he's CS Labour, and we're talking more about his experiences then. Thank you for your time. Let's talk about Marsabit being one of the far-flung counties, marginalized for a long time. And you've talked about that when you were governor, other than the money that was coming from the exchequer, you managed to get funding from international donors. The Equalization Fund, in your view, did that help bring the marginalized counties to the level of those seen to be in the town areas?
Well, thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, the resource from the National Treasury is good. Is making a lot of difference. But, you know, those areas that are really hungry for development, they are now struggling so much to handle basics than, you know, other counties. So given that people now have tested development, have tested resources, they want more and more all the time. And the Equalization Fund is a noble idea. The idea is just to give you an opportunity to catch up with the rest of the country. And there are to be investment in particular in social services, water, health, you know, roads, so that you can easily catch up with the rest. I am not very sure about the modalities of, you know, the operational aspect of it.
Did you feel its impact? Did it help Marsabit County?
Well, the Equalization Fund, I think for the period I was there, it had not even come. It just came, you know, the planning bit of it just came there either 2017 or end of 2016. But for the project to have actually taken place, it must have been after, you know, last election. The idea, even at the moment, I really have still some challenge with the operations because that should have actually been devolved from politics, particularly those on the elected positions. Maybe a commission or, you know, a president should have actually handled so that there's clarity and, you know, effective implementation of them without any, you know, interference from individual political interest.
Okay.
Yeah, in my view, that will have been the case. But it's a good money, it will have made a lot of difference. But the challenge is that maybe our members of parliament, which they should not have done, is now instead of dividing this money into so many small projects, we should have actually invested that money into one or two projects, which will have the biggest impact. If part of that money was used to tarmac a road that's going to link the constituencies, and it will have made a lot of difference. Okay. Or if it was to do a major water project, that many people can benefit from it, it can make a difference. So, but now at the moment, you know, the money is, because of equity, is divided to constituencies. The constituencies are now divided into projects. Some are small projects which cannot really make a lot of impact.
Right. There are those, when it comes to revenue distribution to the various counties, argue Nairobi County, for instance, should be getting more allocation because it contributes more to the GDP and it's the capital. Marsabit being the biggest county, do you think there should be a difference in just looking at size and what you must contend with, or why are you satisfied with the, you know, fashion in which the revenue has been allocated?
I'm particularly extremely happy with the performance of the Commission of Vienna allocation. I have not had an opportunity to interact with the current commissioners, but the first one led by Chesrem, I see they've done a wonderful job. They were very faithful to the Constitution, they were very faithful to the Kenyan people, and they went almost all over, were able to see, and they were able to do their work, you know, with a lot of precision. And that's extremely good. But, you know, you must realize that in this country, every part of this country belongs to each one of us. So the idea that Nairobi contributes more, therefore it gets more, I think really should not be the case. Yeah. Because if Marsabit is developed, or if Mandera is developed, and things are good, nobody limits you, you know, to go and start your business there or even work there. So the idea is even if you can even take a lot of population from the center to the far-flung area, this country will develop evenly. Because what happens in one corner, both negatively and positively, affects each one of us. So that's why I think we need to call for more investment in those arid areas so that it can support more population. Not only population from within, but also population from the rest of the counties.
Yeah. I spoke to the first governor of Wajir County, and one of the things he was telling me early on when they started out as a new government was that the transitional authority at the time had advised that some of the devolved functions be left to the national government and be devolved with time because of the capacity at the county at the time. Did you face such a challenge?
On many things, as a person, I couldn't agree with most of us had serious issues and misgivings about the transition authority.
Right.
If they are nurtured and beside, devolution at those initial stages, maybe our pace of development should have been much faster. They had their own challenges. I think there's serious also capacity in terms of leadership. But also, you must realize that Rome was not built in a day. Any system, when you're not changing from one system to the other, it takes a bit of time to mature. It also takes a bit of time for people to psychologically prepare for it. There were also issues in the mainline ministries where they think, since one aspect is devolved, they want to try to look for opportunity to claw back on those powers that are already being given to the county. That has been a challenge. And in fact, they even did it because in subsequent legislations, there were attempts to take powers away from the county government. But I consider that as a normal challenge. It has happened, but we are very happy where we have reached. I think now almost all the functions that are meant for the counties have already been devolved. And it's just up to the counties now to make sure that, whatever has been, the response that has been given to them, they are up to it and do it well.
Okay. The 5th Devolution Conference, we had the COG chair, while speaking of the challenges the counties are still facing, talk about the duplicity of roles, that, functions are devolved, but some are still being done and handled by the national government and at the county level as well. And perhaps this also speaks to the political will to either rationalize or to let go. What's your comment on that?
I earlier said, system, when we have a complete change of system, you cannot fit in the same day. It's a gradual process. These gray areas, this ambiguity that we see from time to time, I'm sure is going to clear with time.
5 years
and
on?
Things have, the transformation has been, beyond even, comprehension. What's happening? Those first 2 years has been a challenge. Even moving the officers, moving the payroll, moving this, moving that, has not been very easy. But where we have reached now, I am extremely happy. The national government has done a lot in terms of letting go the function that is meant for, for the counties. And the rest is just the ability of the governors and the county government to work hard and ensure that we do not have a vacuum. We cannot devolve the national government if the functions are devolved and then the functions are not fully taken up in terms of translating to services for the people. It will have been a challenge. Look at the case of, let's say, immunization. Certain component of health. There could be a disaster in one of these counties. Do they have the ability to manage? So they will have to rely on the national government because the national government cannot really, because the people out there belong to the president. They belong to this country. They do not belong to the county alone. So when there are situations which are, look at the issues of disasters like drought, diseases, certain catastrophe, floods. That's why the national government has to come in to complement the function. I mean, the work of the county government.
Yeah. You've had Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, propose that there be an extra layer, tier of government, if you like, 8 of them. There are those who argue condense the counties that we have, the 47, repackaged to 8 regions. What do you think of these proposals? Which way would you agree with, if at all?
Sophie, really, I do not want to contradict any position, but it's a matter that actually should be thrown into the arena of the public. We've had counties, it has done a wonderful job, but it also has its own challenges, some very serious challenges. And there's no harm in looking at, taking the the workable ones and look at, trying to fix where it's not been working. In terms of also making a difference, look at community. If you look at certain regions, if you don't have responsible county governments, they can easily marginalize certain segment of the society in that region. We've seen cases, we've had cases, we've also experienced cases where services, opportunities are dispensed based on, the political interest, based on ethnic interest. So this is going to be a very serious matter. We could be having a lot of gains up to development, but we could be fragmenting the country in terms of the cohesion. This is one area. Number two, each county is employing people, employing without, some even don't look at the rational bit of it. In terms of balancing, the development component vis-a-vis.
Yeah.
And they are skewed, towards one direction. But you can also argue, assuming now we had a bigger county, or maybe 3 counties together. One, I'm sure you can easily fight these issues of, marginalizations within those counties, because you will have more than a number of communities be together, and no single community can actually be elected on the basis of, ethnicity. Yeah. So therefore, some of these risks are shared, because we support each other. You became this position because of me, and therefore, I think through this is an argument that needs to be, put into the arena of the national public, so that can be debated. It's not a bad idea.
A referendum.
But the thing is, introducing another layer, then it's like actually we are reversing gains of devolution. But you can still have fewer counties without necessarily having a third layer.
Do you think that would be easy, people letting go after being used to our own county, our people? Wouldn't it face quite some resistance?
Of course it will face resistance, but it might also be acceptable to a section, generally a fraction of some population. Okay. Because the thing is, you might not, even right now in the counties, we have the county headquarters or the county governor's office as the center of it. We have the county, but we also have offices at the sub-county level. And the sub-county government also need to be functional. There is a sub-county administrator with his own heads of department, and they are supposed to get resources from the county. They are supposed to be fully functional in terms of discharging the mandate. So still, something exists. But the thing is how best we can strengthen this. Yeah. But also having, instead of having 47 counties, maybe having 20-something or even 30, depending. I'm not saying that we should have that, but with clear standard, something with a national outlook, even at the county level, is a subject worth discussing.
Okay. We saw the Busia governor, Ojamong, arrested, spent 2 nights behind bars, and following that, on corruption-related charges, the Council of Governors, through the chairman, gave a statement through the press calling for immunity for governors, that they want to enjoy the same kind that is the president enjoys. Do you support those calls?
Well, I think the issue is not immunity. What they should have asked for was fair, equal treatment at all levels. They should, if certain omissions, certain allegations are made, then there should be treatment at all levels. Maybe that is, it should have made sense to agitate for that. But, agitating for, immunity against criminal prosecution, It's not possible. No.
Because the fact that shouldn't be afraid
the fact that
you have nothing to hide.
There's a criminal element in allegations.
Yeah.
It means that certain section of the country is wronged. Criminal is always against a person or against the state, whichever. So now who protects the other person? If my actions have actually impeded, a freedom and, a robbed resource from you, as a country, who do we speak for? Do we speak for the person who has been wronged, or we protect this person who might have wronged? I think the dialogue, which I'm sure they might really not have meant exactly that. Maybe what they meant was fair treatment.
That's what they said. Well, so we shall not try to imagine they meant otherwise when they said it. Yeah. Even read the section for which grants the president immunity, saying that's the same status they want to enjoy. So they were very clear about wanting. Yeah.
In my view, they should just agitate for even, fair.
Not politicize the process,
yes,
is what.
But to agitate, for equal rights in terms of before the law, and the same treatment at all levels, whether the suspects are in national government, officers in national government or county governments, or at any level, whether it's a CS, whether it's a governor, at least the treatment it should be the same. And I'm not saying that it's not the same, but I think, in my view, that's what you should actually agitate for. Or maybe to be humiliated in terms of when you are being arrested by it. That's also not very, maybe things will have been done differently.
Yeah, they had issue with that as well. But on the subject of corruption and the place of Senate to hold governors to account, early on, following 2013, we saw summons out there for governors to appear before Senate and all of these kind of measures to try and, fight graft. Do you think the institutions charged, especially at the county level, from the time you are in office, are playing their rightful role?
Well, of course, there are a lot of institutions in this country charged with the responsibility of enforcing good governance and accountability to the public. We have the Auditor General. To some extent, also the controller budget, because processing payments, expenditure, it does not pass the scrutiny of the controller budget. And at the end of the expenditure every year, or a number of, maybe even twice a year, there are a number of auditors that come and look at your books and look at, this. There are a number of even other institutions, the EACC, the DCI. There are many, many authorities that are actually charged with the responsibility of safeguarding and ensuring that whatever expenditure you undertake are within, the established norms and practice and the laws. And Senate is the custodian of the right, custodian of the interests of the counties. Yeah. And there are powers to summon, to scrutinize, and, to even recommend appropriate action to other relevant arms of government. So I'm sure if this is done, in the last parliament, the last government, we've seen also cases where some senators with particular interest, political interest in those counties,
would use that
or maybe, appear to be addressing other concerns or trying to weaken governors, rather than, strictly applying the issues as they are. So then it becomes very difficult. Are you summoning me for good reason? Are you summoning me because it's really within your mandate? Or you are summoning me so that, you try to humiliate me? Of course, you are aware in cases where, there were exchanges in the Senate between a governor and a senator. Right. That should have been avoided. But I see now things are slightly different. The level of engagement is quite respectful. But that does not mean that, they should be soft on those issues. But I'm sure the way I see it, there is even generally the engagement at all levels between the national county government, the atmosphere has changed a lot. There's a lot of respect now. There's a lot of reciprocity. There's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of, complementarity. Unfortunately, when we were there, we didn't have that privilege because the atmosphere was quite hostile.
Yeah, it was. I remember even with the Council of Governors at the time. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 years of devolution, having been governor for the first 5, how is devolution doing?
I'll give you 7 out of 10. and very many reasons. The basic areas, look at the service delivery. Are we better off in health now? I say 100%. We might not have reached the 100%, the target, but there are a lot of changes. Personnel, equipment, referral facilities, the number of engagements that we've had, the donor confidence has a lot changed. Look at the ECDs. If you look at the ECDs, is an area that was actually not fully functional. Right now, most counties have done a lot. I can give you an example of Marsabit, where we constructed more than close to 300 classrooms within a very short time, employed about 300, even more, ECD teachers. And we saw the enrollment triple within the first 3 years. In areas where the enrollment was at 60, we were forced now to think of additional 2-3 additional classrooms because the enrollment now more than triple in most areas. Okay. So even infrastructure, urban planning, the town, business, there's a lot of vibrancy. The value of land goes up, opportunities. There's a lot of movements also, from all over. Yeah, that is what's really happening. Yeah.
Before we wind up finally, the one thing you'd say was your legacy, that you look back and say this one thing. I know you could talk about many things, but what is the one thing you'd say, my legacy, this one?
I want to be candid with you, that there's more than one that the people of Marsabit remember before.
But the one you're most proud of, perhaps, I'd rephrase.
I'm proud of many. One, this cohesion index. Because basic is survival, basic is life. Where people are actually killing each other, I left a community that really now have integrated, now live side by side as brothers and sisters, and they appreciate each other, knowing that they belong to one community. Okay. This is number one. Number two, we've addressed all the challenges from water. People were actually moving from the average distance to water areas was like 60, 70 kilometers on average. Right now, there's no place, on average, we have reduced that from 60 kilometers to less than 20 kilometers. Access to health services, we have reduced from about 60 kilometers to the same. All right. And more importantly, one thing that I need to be remembered is that I undertook, with the support of development partners, one of the only unique cross-border program that integrates the development between communities on this side and on the other side in the world. Okay. With an initial investment pledge by the UN of 50 billion in 5 years.
All right. You now CS in government serving. Do you have plans to go back to politics per se in and of itself?
I want to reserve for another time. But I'm focused on one thing now. Serve the country from where I sit, ensure the president's legacy succeeds, and make a difference in the labor sector. And particularly on the social protection. Because I'm dealing with the very vulnerable in the society, the family, the orphans, the children, the elderly, the cash transfers. These are segments of the communities that depends on the goodwill of a government, of a responsible government like President Kenyatta's government. And I want my role is just to ensure that they get the stipend every month and they get all those services required.
All right. Thank you.
Asante sana.
For your time.
Thank you very much.
We end with a handshake. Much appreciated.
The standard. The standard handshake.